for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Councilmember Scagliola. A few special announcements before we get started. For those of you joining us in YouTube, we are experiencing some technical difficulties with the audio. It might fade in and out, so please bear with us. Also, as a reminder, students who are participating in the Hal Baldwin Scholarship are required to sign in on the sheet that was located in the back. If you have any questions, you may forward those questions to forward an email to sgonzalez@shirts.com. That's SGONZ. Proclamation, National Procurement Month, March 2023. If I can please have the procurement staff join me up here. City of Shirts Proclamation, National Procurement Month, March 2023. Whereas professional public procurement is crucial for the effective and efficient operations of all governments across the great state of Texas, including the City of Shirts. Whereas the City of Shirts Purchasing Department has 4 employees: Director of HR and Purchasing, Purchasing Manager, Risk and Safety Specialist, and Purchasing Specialist, for a combined total of 53 years. Whereas these procurement professionals dedicate themselves to providing the best value for every taxpayer dollar by providing high caliber strategic, logistical, and operational support for the city. Whereas in addition to the purchase of goods and services, public procurement adds value to the organization by performing such functions as executing, implementing, and administrating contracts, developing procurement strategies, cultivating working relationship with suppliers and other departments with the organization, and providing safety and risk management support to city staff. Whereas public procurement has tremendous influence on the economic conditions in the City of Shirts, the state of Texas, and indeed across the United States, with cumulative purchasing power running in the billions of dollars. Whereas the National Institute of Governmental Purchasing has designated the month of March as Procurement Month to further expand the awareness of the purchase professionals' role to government officials, the general public, business, and corporate leaders. Whereas this year's theme is Procure On, to celebrate that regardless of the scenario, procurement professionals always find a way to preserve and procure it on. Now therefore, I, Ralph Gutierrez, Mayor for the City of Shirts, Texas, do hereby recognize March 2023 as Procurement Month. I encourage all residents of the City of Shirts to recognize and honor the dedicated and hard work that the City of Shirts Purchasing Department provides on a daily basis. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, for recognizing us. Thank you, Angela, for being here, and Jessica for being here. I couldn't do it without their support and without their skill set, so thank you, guys.
Perfect, thank you.
We'll move on to city events and announcements. Announcements of upcoming events, Mr. James.
Thank you, Mayor. Just as a reminder, on Monday, March 20th is the City Employee Remembrance Day ceremony. That's at 12 p.m. in the Civic Center Grand Ballroom. Friday, March 24th is the council pre-budget retreat, again in the Civic Center. That's scheduled for 8:30 to 4:30. Saturday, March 25th is we have another star party at Crescent Bend Park. That's 7:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. Crescent Bend, if you don't know, is 12805 Schaefer Road. And then our next regular council meeting is Tuesday, March 28th, 6 p.m. Fingers crossed we are back in council chambers.
Thank you, Mr. James. Announcements and recognitions by our city manager, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, we've had several promotions in the month of February. We had, and I do want to comment that I do like to see this. Whenever we can promote from within, I think that's a good thing, and it speaks well of our staff as well as our organization. So the folks that got promoted during the month of February were Elena Sumner. She moved from permit technician up to development specialist. Cherie Courtney was an administrative assistant, and she promoted into deputy secretary. John Von Hoven, he was promoted from firefighter to fire apparatus operator. Patricia Wilson moved from fire apparatus operator to lieutenant. And Myron Borger promoted from lieutenant to battalion chief. Eric Herzog moved from firefighter to deputy marshal. Andy Cook was promoted from EMT to paramedic. And Levi Flickinger, promoted from EMT to paramedic also. Chuck Lyles moved up from EMT to paramedic. And Karen Kionis promoted from communications officer to civilian evidence technician. So really proud of all those folks for moving up and stepping up into their new role.
Next, announcements and recognitions by the mayor. Well, congratulations to all the staff on your promotions, well deserved. Also, Operation Comfort. Our city was a sponsor of the event to help our wounded warriors. I'd like to thank our city staff, the supporters and the runners who contributed to this great cause. And also, on behalf of the city, I was accepting this from Operation Comfort and appreciate it so much. All right, we'll move on to the hearing of residents. This time is set aside for any person who wishes to address the city council. Each person is limited to 3 minutes, and we ask for, before addressing the council, for the record, please state your name and address. I see that no one signed up for the hearing of residents, so we'll move on to consent agenda items. Consent agenda items are considered self-explanatory, and information packets are provided to council and available for public viewing. These items require no separate discussion unless requested by council. Item number 1, minutes. Consideration or action regarding the approval of the following minutes from our regular meeting on March 7th, 2023. Item number 2, appointment, reappointment for boards, commissions, and committees. Accept the resignation of Patricia Barnes of the Schertz Historical Preservation Committee. Item number 3, resolution number 23R28. Consideration or action by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, approving the resolution awarding the contract to Linebarger, Gorgan, Blair and Sampson, LLP for court collection agency services. Item number 4, resolution number 23R16. Consideration or action by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, approving amended and reinstate bylaws of the Schertz Economic Development Corporation and other matters in connection therewith. And item number 5, resolution number 23R24. Consideration or action by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing the city manager to enter into a standard utility agreement with the state of Texas for the relocation of utilities, specifically the Riata Lift Station along IH-35 in preparation for the IH expansion project. Council, do any of these items need to be removed for separate action? Is there a motion to approve consent agenda items 1 through 5?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion made by Councilmember Davis and second by Councilmember Hayward. Any other discussion? Let's call for the vote.
Aye.
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 We have 5 ayes, no objection, motion passes. We'll move on to discussion items. Ordinance number 23S07. Consideration or action by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, on an ordinance to amend Part 3 Schertz Code of Ordinances, the Unified Development Code, Article 5, zoning restrictions, subsections 21.5.2, 21.5.5, and 21.5.11. Article 9, site design standards, subsection 21.9.7 and 21.9.10, and Article 10, parking standards, subsection 21.10.2, 21.10.3, 21.10.4, 21.10.7C, and 21.10.9, and Article 14, transportation, subsection 21.14.3. This is our final reading. I think we're breaking this up into 3 separate actions. 6A will be in reference to the parking spaces, the parking dimensions of 9 by 18. Council, any comments? Is there a motion to approve? Ordinance number 23S07 in reference to the parking dimensions 19 by 18.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion made by Councilmember Hayward and second by Councilmember Watson. Any other discussion? Let's call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Nay.
We have 3 ayes, 2 objection, motion passes. We'll move on to item number 6B, ordinance number 23S07. This portion regarding the parking and multifamily of 1.7 parking spaces plus an additional 5%. Council, any discussion regarding this item?
Mayor, if you please, I didn't want to cause a lot of trouble last week. I just wanted to have a little discussion. It's amazing they kind of circumvented that and forced us into doing these individually. Here's my thing. I just want to know how we got from 2.5 down to 1.7. That's a 32% reduction. I'd like to know, what did anyone really do a stress test on this? What are the implications of doing this? Has it been done before? What are other cities doing in this respect? I don't like density. Mostly because in my view, it kind of leads to congestion. And what causes congestion? Well, a lot of cars on the streets causes congestion. Not having enough parking spaces. I can bring you into places in this city, around some cul-de-sacs, and there isn't a single parking space available on the street. All the parking is done in the driveways. And some of these smaller homes, like garden homes, no more than 1,200 square feet, there are 4 vehicles in the driveway. And being Texas, they're trucks with hitches. 4 of them backed 2 by 2, hanging into the streets. We can do better than that. I think we need to do better than that. As I mentioned last week, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say, you know what, there's just way too much available parking around here. No, the challenge is to find a parking spot sometimes. So going from 2.5 to 1.7, okay, for one, I don't really understand what 0.7 of a car is, but maybe it's a Yugo. But please explain, 2.5 to 1.7.
Sure. So as I kind of noted in the staff report, we came up with these changes to the EDC for a few reasons. One was the development subcommittee. One more things we were hearing from folks in the community or developers. The thing we hear most often from developers of multifamily is that the standard we have is too high. So Councilman, I don't disagree with you. There are places you go in this community where you struggle to find parking. Good luck going to Chick-fil-A on a Friday at noon and trying to find a parking space. But to be honest, I cannot recall ever getting a call from a resident of an apartment complex in Schertz saying there isn't enough parking here. Don't think that's what we have. And so again, we're not reducing the parking throughout the community. We're doing one particular area. And again, I will say this, that there are pros and cons to everything. So on the one hand, we may say, well, having more parking is always better. But what that means is the cost to develop and the cost to provide that housing and the cost of the rents for the folks who live there increases because of this additional standard for parking that we have. When we pave more areas, be it for parking, for driveways, for things like that, you get more runoff and it requires more detention, and that water releases more slowly over time. So staff looked at what the change would do. We compared it to a couple of complexes here. What P&Z with their recommendation, it equates to about a 5% reduction. The other problem is the current provision was extremely difficult to manage through the process because it was based on spaces per number of bedrooms. And often people change that mix as they move the project forward and they come in and do the initial due diligence and they do market studies. That bedroom mix may change. I think the other thing, and that's a bit of a misnomer that we've heard, is more bedrooms inherently means more cars. And I don't know that it necessarily does. So myself, for an example, almost 30 years ago when my wife and I got married, it was a one-bedroom apartment. If you would even call it a one-bedroom apartment, it was sort of an efficiency combo, one bedroom, and we had 2 cars. Moved to another apartment complex, 2 bedrooms, we still had our 2 cars. Ironically, we moved to a third apartment complex because we were down to 1 car and it was 2 bedrooms. So it varies on situation. We've heard from developers of affordable housing come in and say, we're generally geared for families, and most of those families tend to be younger kids, and so we have more bedrooms, don't need as many parking. So again, what staff would say is we feel like we've looked at it, we've worked with the Development Review Committee, we've gotten a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission, and they even added that 5% back in. They felt like that was appropriate, and staff is recommending approval of it. I think part of this is a philosophical question for council. What staff has understood is, let's not be overly rigid and take ordinances to the extreme. This idea that I can never have a scenario or situation where I'll have a parking problem. Otherwise, frankly, we need to double our parking standard for restaurants to accommodate Chick-fil-A. But the vast majority of other restaurants and Schertz, you can easily find a parking space at noon on Friday. And that's a little bit of what the philosophy is about. As I said, as this ordinance goes forward, like we've done with others, we can come in and tweak it. If we find it's not working, there's not enough, we can come back with it. There's no way to know for sure, but staff feels like, based on what we've looked at, we're comfortable recommending allowing. Communities are frankly all over the place. We have some communities that have a similar standard to us. We have some that have dropped down to about a 1.7. It just depends on what you want to be as a community, what you're seeing in your community. The answer I would go back to is, in the 11 years I've been here, I do not think I have received a single call from a resident of an apartment complex in Schertz saying there is not enough parking. So that's part of how we evaluate it.
Philosophical, yeah, probably. You know, maybe you never got a call like that because 2.5 is the right number.
Perhaps so, Councilman.
And,
Maybe it is.
You know, if you're gonna err, well, err to the side of caution. Although my philosophy is even erring to the side of caution is erring, but that's for another day. Reducing it by 30% though in one fell swoop, you say you can go back and address it later. Well, I don't believe you can, because if you allowed somebody to have it at 1.7, good luck trying to force somebody else
That's right.
into increasing it. You know, so I can see this incremental stepping, maybe to lower the standards until you start getting phone calls about people complaining. Okay, maybe that would be the best indicator, but until that happens, perhaps 2.5 is the best. or maybe 2 is sufficient. What I'm gauging this on is the apartments they're attempting to put up in Northcliffe.
Which apartments are those?
The ones next to Scenic Hills.
I think those are townhomes,
Okay.
just for what it's
Oh,
worth.
I know, but, you know, potatoes to me. They're fourplexes, you know, they changed the name, but the flavor remains the same.
So let me, if I may, Councilman, as an example, I can have someone come in and they can call a room a study or a home office.
Mhm.
And under the ordinance now, they don't have to provide parking for it.
Mhm.
But I and you, staff, are not showing up to that apartment complex where somebody's living and go, let me see what's going on in here. So again, the problem we have with our current ordinance and standard, the way it's written, is we really can't enforce it. It's per bedroom. What do they choose to call it on the plans? That's one of the challenges we have, just so you understand. And again, if we had a rock solid ordinance where we could understood, but that's part of what we're trying to overcome are some of these ambiguities and problems of enforcement. Again, you may still feel like the number should be higher, instead of 1.7 go to something else. But again, that was the logic behind it.
That does make sense. I can actually deal with that. The thing is, they're 3-bedroom homes across the board, is what they're proposing, 3 bedrooms. And at 1.7, you know, even if it is only 2 bedrooms. And, you know, the thing with kids is, kids grow up. As soon as my daughter turned 16, we had 2 cars in our driveway. When she turned 16, we had 3 cars in the driveway.
Mhm.
You know, they do grow up. And that's what I'm trying to get across. They're talking about using garages for parking space. Well, you know, in that case, we have 2 parking spaces because we have the garage and we also have the driveway. No, you really don't. You know, unless you want to play that little fire drill first thing in the morning, switching the cars around, somebody's going to be parking on the street or attempting to park on the street. I don't know the right answer. All I know is going down to 1.7 seems a little too much, a little too quickly. You know, maybe a compromise is a better idea. Maybe 2 is a nice round number. I don't know. But I feel much more comfortable going to 2 from 2.5 than going to 1.7 from 2.5.
Yes, sir.
That's,
Understood.
and that's my point. And you know what? I was on the losing end of that discussion last week. I may be on the losing end of it this week. I do apologize for taking up your time. I had to ask the question though.
No apology.
If you don't ask the question,
Yes, sir.
no answer is no answer. And then I feel uncomfortable. So long as so long as it's out in the open, transparent, go for broke. And I'm gonna make a motion, on the,
Councilmember Brown has a question.
Excuse me. Well, I don't know if I wanna go on now, cause I was gonna kind of support you. You cut me off there. But, you know, the more I think about it, you know, we're going to reduce the size of our parking. Granted, it's 1 foot, but that adds up over an apartment complex considerably. And then on top of that, increase the number of spaces required. It's almost kind of like a double whammy. In many cases, although apartments have not had an issue, I think what we've had developed here so far, the developers have been very generous with the parking. But I don't think they're gonna be as generous anymore, and that's why they're pushing for these smaller lots, more density, et cetera, all the way around. You know, they're looking to squeeze a few more dollars out of every transaction as well. So again, like Councilman Scagliola, 1.7, that's a tough one to go from 2.5. And reducing our overall apartment sizes on top of that. So, you know, you know, is there a better number in there? I mean, I'll agree, is 2 the right number? I don't know, it's not quite as drastic.
Yeah. I don't know if that was a question to me or
Well,
not.
it
I mean,
is, it's kind of a question, it's kind of a, you know, rhetorical
Yeah.
statement at the same time.
It really is a judgment call in terms of what council is comfortable with in terms of the parking requirement. You know, so again, we could go up to 3 spaces per unit if we wanted. I mean, that's certainly just as good.
Yeah,
Again, the
so-
current standard is 1.5 spaces per 1-bedroom unit, 2 spaces per 2-bedroom, 2.5 for 3+ parking spaces, and then the 5% is visitor parking. So if council's not comfortable making the change, you can certainly deny this and leave it as is.
Let me, before we go on, I'm trying to do some calculations here. Just to see what the numbers will be.
So while the mayor is doing his
Mm-hmm.
calculations, can you restate how many parking spots per bedroom?
So currently, the current standard is 1.5 spaces per 1-bedroom unit, 2 spaces per 2-bedroom unit, 2.5 spaces per 3+ bedroom unit, and then an additional 5% on top of that. We're recommending simply 1.7 spaces per unit, and the 5%.
I did some calculations here on the 300 apartment complex. Okay, 300. And the reason we did this is to try to get a simple calculation where the staff can see, not count the bedrooms, but count the units. It's much easier for them to count the units and not how many bedrooms are in each unit. We have a 300 apartment complex, 300 units with a 1.7 and a 5%. That equates to 536 parking spaces.
Mhm.
If we go with a two per unit, that will come up to 630 parking spaces, almost a difference of 100.
Mhm.
And just, I just did those calculations so that council could understand what we're talking about
Right.
here. Anyway, but Councilmember Scagliola was about to make a motion, so I'll give him the privilege if he wants to go ahead and.
As I said, I don't know what the right answer is, but I'm pretty sure that 1.7 isn't correct. And I make a motion that we settle on 2 as a standard.
Second.
We have a motion made by Councilmember Scagliola to reset it from 1.7 with the 5%.
To 2 with the 5%.
And second by Councilmember Davis. Any other comments? Yes, Councilmember Brown.
Yeah, that will also affect our 1-bedroom. the way this is
It will,
written.
likely what that will do is, by my estimate on a couple of projects, it'll, you know, it's perfectly fine, it'll increase our parking requirement for apartments.
Okay, here's the thing, you know, I don't really have a problem with 1.5
Mhm.
for a 1-bedroom.
Right.
And 2 for 2 for anything larger than that.
Well,
I don't wanna make it 2 per unit. I agree, that might be, requiring too many.
Okay, I thought that was
Right.
the motion, I'm sorry.
No, right now, we allow them 1.5 for a single bedroom
Right,
and 2 for a 2-bedroom. I think that should be, you know, the way we move forward. And that may reduce some of these, some of the number of parking spaces.
okay.
Yes, Councilmember Davis.
Yeah, I'm gonna withdraw my second. But the point is, with these developments, the staff is saying they're having a hard time validating bedrooms. So while at face value, it says, okay, 1.5 for a 1-bedroom or 2 for a 2-bedroom, it's like Mr. James said, somebody lays out a floor plan for a unit, and they've got a 1-bedroom with an office that somebody rents, they convert the office area into a bedroom. So in fact, it's a 2-bedroom, not a 1-bedroom. And what they're trying to do is coming up with a simple math saying, you've got 300 housing units, this is how many parking spaces that you need.
That's right, and by our calculation, again, it's not a complete sample, because again, part of the problem we had is figuring out on these complexes how many bedrooms they have. Well, the ones we could, it looked like that what P and Z did is about a 5% reduction on the ones we sample. Again, it's gonna vary from project to project based on bedrooms, but our math was about a 5% reduction in parking. And again, I will say this, it's a minimum standard. And again, that means we shouldn't guarantee, we're not guaranteed, shouldn't count on getting any more. But if developers want to put in more, they can certainly put in more going forward. But yeah, what we tried to do, again, based on our understanding of council, is we want to simplify the codes. We want to make it clearer to developers what's expected of them, and thus we went to this one standard per unit, which seems to be the most straightforward. And you're right, there's not necessarily kind of a magic to what it should be. The impact of this change, whether you go 1.5, 1.7, 2 per unit, is going to vary from complex to complex from our current standard because of that differentiation in bedroom mix. And so again, not a right answer. I can certainly appreciate council saying we don't have our comfort level dropping it down so much, kind of going forward with it. You know, the question is, if you're not comfortable where it should be, although it doesn't simplify it, you just want to leave it as is, and that, you know, you're getting the standard that we've got today. Again, it's a little more complicated, but if there's a hesitancy at what the right number will be, I think the problem you're always going to run into is the change from per bedroom to per unit is inherently going to vary from complex to complex. And so again, one of the things we tried not to do, and it could be it happens, is not to increase the requirement for parking. So again, one thing you may consider is just saying, let's deny this altogether, leave it as is. We can come back to it later, deal with it later, see how it goes and go from there.
You know, I'm trying to do a little better in active listening and interpreting. So, Councilmember Davis, you seconded it originally. What's your thoughts on this? What is it you like or don't like?
I'm concerned that we're gonna end up getting a place that just doesn't have enough parking. Using the mayor's example, if you put in 300 units and we go by unit, the 1.7 plus 5% is like 535. The 2.0 is like 630, so it's about 100 unit difference, 100 parking spot difference. I just don't know if you necessarily need 620 parking spots for a 300 unit. But again, it depends really on what you're building.
And who you're marketing to.
So if you've got 300 units and they're all one bedroom, then the requirement for 600 parking spots is probably way too much. But if they're putting in 300 units and they're all 3 bedroom, then you might be getting tight. So I mean, but I certainly sympathize with the staff, and I think that's one of the problems we have with a lot of portions of our UDC, where there's a lot of ambiguity in there and a lot of excessive flexibility that just makes these calculations and makes any project that even a developer wants to do kind of difficult. I kind of like the straight math per unit. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head by explaining how would we validate bedrooms. I have a 5-bedroom house, and I can guarantee you we're only using 4 bedrooms because I've got one set up as my office in my house. I do like it by unit. I do like a straight number. In retrospect and doing the math and trying to juggle the different types of complexes out there, I kind of think 2 per unit could be too high. There's a potential 1.7 could be too low. I mean, I wouldn't mind looking at 1.8 or 1.8, something a little bit closer.
Yeah, you can split the difference, go 1.85. I would expect that's keeping the parking standard about what it is presently. It's just a simpler form.
I mean, we tried to account for those larger units with the 2.5, but if we're not gonna try to calculate, bedrooms, but if we're not gonna try to calculate bedrooms, and I'm with you, I wouldn't even go down that path.
So I think one of the issues when we talk the 3 bedrooms is this challenge is it 2 adults and a child over 16 who's living there? Is it 3 adults who are sharing a place? Or do you have a couple or a single parent with a couple of kids and each kid has their own bedroom? That's sort of the challenge you kind of have with it, is this stuff varies. What we have found is a lot of it is, what's the market for? Who are they marketing to? What sort of amenities and things do they have, whatnot? You know, again, I'll go back to what the NRP group said, is they are clearly marketing to families with children and young children, and so a lot of high bedroom units, but again, not a lot of drivers because it's affordable. Yeah, that's the challenge on this, and so you're right, the crux of it is we don't want to necessarily have a standard that's so high that we're over parking everything for the cost and the waste, but the flip side is we don't want to be under parked too much however often. That's the challenge.
And also provide staff with an easier way to count exactly how many.
That's
parking
right, and
spots.
part of it, I think we're trying to do is make it, you know, as council has had me up here before, say, we want to streamline this process, it takes too long. When we start getting into tricky formulas, where we start saying, well, the bedroom has changed, and then they get through site plan approval, but now they're into building inspections, and buildings are going, well, the size of this technically makes it a bedroom for building code, and we're stuck. That's what we're trying to do. I think the other logic, just to be clear, is there is some bit of philosophy. We are trying to move away from having a lack of clarity and extending the process by saying, well, they can always go to Board of Adjustment if it's too high. What's the basis of doing it in this case versus that case? It's the unknown. What is staff supposed to recommend? You know, it was a little bit of, we're gonna set this floor, and this is it. Nobody's going lower, so don't walk in saying, hey, we wanna get a variance. You can do it. Staff's gonna recommend denial because we spent this much time up here going, is whatever it is enough, as opposed to you come back with 1.5, and then I'm getting, well, this person says they don't need that many, is staff gonna recommend approval of a variance? I got no basis. That's a little bit of our challenge.
Calculations at 1.85 equates to 582 parking spaces.
Okay, here's the thing, I made a motion, the second one was withdrawn. How about if I take away my motion? Councilmember Davis, you made a very cogent counter proposal there. What kind of a motion would you make, seeing that mine is withdrawn?
You know, again, it's all fuzzy math depending on, 300 units, but it's all fuzzy math depending on whether it's 3-bedroom or 2-bedroom or 1-bedroom. I'm more concerned about tight parking spaces, which we've already reduced to, versus the total number, so I'm okay with the 1.7 plus 5%.
Okay, let me go with this. How about, I'll make a motion to propose 2 straight units as opposed to the 1.7. See if that gets a second.
Second.
I'm writing.
You're writing.
Okay, without the 5%, am I clear on the clarification? Because you indicated 2% straight. I didn't hear the plus the additional 5%.
I think kicking in that extra 5% just puts it over the threshold a little bit.
That was just for clarification, Councilmember Watson, okay? And that was, you still remain with your second, okay? Okay, for the record, the first motion from Councilman Scagliola and second by Councilmember Davis was withdrawn. Second motion made by Councilmember Scagliola, second by Councilmember Watson, is to go with a straight 2% without the 5%. I'm sorry, 2 per unit without the 5% additional. Okay, any other comments? Let's go ahead and call for the vote. Oh, hold on, before we take the vote.
Mayor, I'm just doing some quick math, just to put it into perspective. Since the apartment complexes tend to have a mix, if you had a scenario where you had a 175 unit apartment complex with 51 bedroom, 100 2-bedroom, and 25 3-bedroom for a total of 175, at the 1.5, the two per 2-bedroom and the 2.5 per greater than 2 bedrooms, that would be 338 spaces. If you did the 1.7 flat requirement, at 175, that's 298 spaces, plus the 5% would give you 312. If you bump that up to 1.8, it's 331, so it's pretty close to the number you had before. If you bump it up to 1.9, it's 349. If you bump it up to 2, it's 368. So in this scenario, not that they're all the same, but it's a 30 space increase if you do a flat 2 in that scenario. So you actually increase the requirement by quite a bit.
That's good. Is that with or without the 5% addition?
That's with the 5%, so it's 350 without the 5%.
But his motion, I believe, was for 2 flat without the 5%.
Yeah, yes, sir. I'm just laying it all out there.
Yeah, I mean, again, to me, it's all theoretical fuzzy math. It's currently 1.5 per bedroom, 2 for 2 bedroom, 2.5 for a 3 bedroom. If we throw out the word bedroom and we just say we're going to a flat rate, you got a unit that's 2 parking spots.
It's easy to do.
I think in the long run, it would probably average out. What's the worst case scenario? The worst case scenario is somebody comes in and puts in a 300 bedroom unit or a 300 unit complex that's all 3 bedroom, and they're only building 2 parking spots for each unit. And that's only a problem if every occupant of every 3 bedroom unit has more than 2 vehicles.
Yes.
I don't think there's a winning math number in any way we look at this. If the goal is to me, the goal is to make it easier for the staff and more sensible for developers, without just creating unnecessary parking spots. I think going to 2 and just getting rid of the 5%, is there any value to the extra 5%? Or is it just,
It's
because
just the
there?
way the formula was done and made up, and so yeah, it's really about, again, the problem you have is you've got this different mix of bedrooms, you got different markets, you got different who they market to. So again, just to be clear, where you have a senior age restricted complex, you're gonna have 2 parking spaces per unit. And if they walk in going, but we're seniors, staff's going, don't care, we're not gonna support a variance, you need to do 2 spaces, you're round and round with council on it. Yeah, it is what it is. So again, in that
But
scenario.
that's the same argument. You make the same argument where if it's a senior age restricted unit with 300 units, you're gonna create 1.7 by this plus 5%.
That's right.
Which means, which means it's either enough parking or not enough parking.
That's right.
So any way we cut this,
Yep.
it's either
The
enough
2 is-
parking or not
The 2
enough
is very
parking.
clean. Staff's main thing is go with a straight standard. It's easy to enforce, easy for folks to understand. We've kicked it around a lot so that if somebody says, well, I'm gonna go ask for a variance, whereas staff, we're gonna go, no, we spent a bunch of time going around and around on this. We're not going lower than that. It's kind of how we're gonna approach it.
So the value of the added, of the extra 5%, if we're looking at a number per unit because of occupants, the value of the 5% is for visiting guests.
It's just visiting guests. That's the concept. I think the intent of the ordinance was 5% covers your visiting guests. Overall.
Maybe staff parking.
Could be staff parking.
And that just popped into my head, and in lieu of the fact that someone might have their grandkids visiting, or we have to account for a business office on the property that might have staff, then I personally would like to go with the simple number. I'm okay with 2, and I would throw the 5% back in to cover visitors and staff.
Okay. However, the motion was been made with a 2, with no extra 5%, and it was second, so we have to call for the vote.
Aye.
Nay.
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 Aye.
We have 3 objections. Motion does not pass. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I'll
Yes.
make a motion that we change it to 2 parking spaces per unit plus 5%.
Motion's been made. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have motion made by Councilmember Davis, second by Councilmember Scaglione to go with the 2% with the 5%, with the extra 5, with a 2 with an extra 5%. Okay. Let's go ahead and call for the vote.
Aye.
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 We have 5 ayes, no objection, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's early still.
All right.
We'll move on to item number 6. This will be easy. Ordinance number 23S07 regarding the remainder of the changes to this ordinance. Council, any questions on the rest of the ordinance? Do I have a motion to accept the remainder of this ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion made by Councilmember Haywood and second by Councilmember Scagliola. Any other comments? Go ahead and call for the vote.
Aye.
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 We have 5 ayes, no objection, motion passes. Okay, we do have a closed session. Item number 7, the city council will meet in closed session in accordance with section 551.072, the Texas Governmental Code, deliberations regarding the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property for future roadways, roadway extensions, and roadway expansions. The time is now 6:47. We will reconvene after our discussion.
This is more fun than I should be allowed to have by law.
session after our discussion and deliberation regarding our closed session in reference to item number 7, roadway expansion and extension. The start time for that discussion was 6:50, end time was 7:04. So there is no vote needed on this one, so we'll move on to roll call confirmation. Our city secretary, Ms. Edmondson, will provide the roll call confirmation for consent agenda items 1 through 5, discussion items 6A, B, and C. Ms. Edmondson?
Good evening. For items number 1 through 5, the consent agenda, a motion was made by Councilmember Davis, seconded by Councilmember Hayward. Mayor Pro Tem Hayward, Councilmembers Davis, Watson, Scagliola, and Hayward all voted yes. Motion passed 5-0. Item number 6. There was 4 total, so I'll start with the first motion. The first motion was made by Councilmember Scagliola, seconded by Councilmember Davis. The motion was to keep the 1 bedroom at 1.5 and 2 units for the rest, plus a 5% variance. Councilmember Davis withdrew his support, his second, and then Councilmember Scagliola withdrew his motion. Number 2, a motion was made by Councilmember Scagliola, seconded by Councilmember Watson. The motion was to make it 2 units straight with no 5% variance. Councilmembers Scagliola and Watson voted yes. Councilmembers Davis, Hayward, and Brown voted no. The motion did not pass. It was 2-3. On the third one, Councilmember Davis made the motion to have the parking spaces 2 per unit with a 5% variance. Councilmember Scagliola seconded that. Mayor Pro Tem Brown, Councilmembers Davis, Watson, Scagliola, and Hayward all voted yes. Motion passed 5-0. The last motion was made by Councilmember Hayward, seconded by Councilmember Scagliola. The motion was to approve the rest of the articles in the ordinance. Mayor Pro Tem Brown, Councilmembers Davis, Watson, Scagliola, and Hayward all voted yes. Motion passed 5-0.
We forgot one portion of that ordinance, the space dimensions, the 9.18.
Oh, I do apologize, correct. So that was
That motion was made by Councilmember Hayward, second by Councilmember Watson. You have that one?
I left that sheet over there, sir.
Okay.
Again, I apologize. There was a motion made by Councilmember Hayward, seconded by Councilmember Watson for the 9x18 parking. Councilmembers Hayward, Watson, and Brown all voted yes. Councilmember Scagliola and Davis voted no. Motion passed 3-2.
All right, thank you. Okay. We'll move on, requesting announcements. Any further announcements for our city manager, Mr. Williams?
Thank you, Mayor. Just one announcement, and one is that it is the legislative session right now for the state of Texas. And staff is monitoring bills. I believe there's been over 9,000 bills filed. And we are doing everything we can to make sure that we monitor those that affect us as a city. I've also created somewhat of a legislative services department and tasked Linda Klepper, our public affairs director, with that job. We're going to grow into it by next session, but that is something that we'll continue to expand as we go along.
Okay. Council, any possible updates or information requested from staff? Council, any items you'd like to place on the future agenda? All right, announcements by council members. Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Nothing tonight.
Councilmember Davis,
Nothing, sir.
Councilmember Watson.
Last week went to Northeast Partnership for the luncheon, and that was all.
Councilmember Scagliola.
I think on Friday, went out to Selma to represent the city there at the festival they were having at Rotama. But other than that, nothing much.
Councilmember Hayward.
Yes, I was at the AGRIP, so the Association of Risk Pool in Orlando, Florida. It was a 4-day conference. There was a ton of information that I'm still trying to process, but it was, all in all, it was really good to go there since I sit on the Risk Pool Board as a voting member. And then the other thing is, as the Region 7 Board of Director, I am going to be watching, along with, I guess, our city, but I'm watching bills as well. And as the Region 7 Board of Director, I will be sending out emails periodically saying, hey, these are the bills that we really need to look at and focus and make some phone calls on. And as Steve said, they actually filed between the two houses, 9,116 bills. Good news is, some of those, there's good and bad news. Good news is, some of the bad bills will probably fall away. Good news is, bad news is, some of the good bills will fall away and bad bills will fall away. But in the end, they only have 87 days unless they go into closed session to figure out what they're gonna vote on. So we just need to keep a strong eye because there actually are coming, there's a lot of bills that are coming after cities, and we've gotta be very vigilant in making phone calls. So, or emails. So if I send it out, I urge you, please do so, because we need to let them know that the cities need to run the cities and they can continue to run the state. That's all.
Thank you. I just want to have one announcement. Well, first of all, thank you, Mr. Williams, for putting that team together. There, as Councilmember Hayward said, 9,116 bills. And surely whatever they do up there will definitely affect us in different ways. And that team will help us understand exactly what's going on in Austin. The time is now 7:16. We stand adjourned.
Yes, sir.